Ron, it is great to finally you and I are meeting and doing this interview, because usually we do it over the phone and we talk about the special, but to finally do this one-on-one is an honor. How does it feel being one of those breakthrough Canadian comedians, somebody who represents what happens in this nation, but you do it in a funny, humorous way, but still making some very strong and important points?
Well, I made a promise to myself when I got back from Los Angeles in '93 that if I was able to actualize my dream and become a stand-up comedian and tour this country, that I would never take it for granted. So I feel very, very fortunate. I mean, you never think of yourself as like the kind accolade you just gave me. I'm a working comedian, and I always have to write, and I enjoy embracing the virtues of people and place. I always have, and that's what sustained me over the long haul, building this career 1 kilometer at a time. Is the sense of adventure that you get from touring the country, and there's nothing better than stepping through a stage door on a snowy night and knowing there's 1,000 people in that theater that you're going to perform for 2 hours or more and give an honest bang for their buck. In a world that's constantly driven by hype and spin, it feels like an honest day's work.
But how do you balance it because let's face it, we all watch television, we watch the news, we read our newspapers, we do all these different things. But a lot of times the things that we read and what we see and what we hear, we don't completely understand. How do you make it a balance where you make it humorous, but at the same time, you're also teaching us and letting us know this is what's going on in the world in such a way where we turn around and we go, oh, so now I get what's going on in politics and around the world?
That's a really, really good question. And, it's a mystery to me, too. Honestly, I mean, it is a mystery, and I come to the art with humility. And I assume I'm just as confused as the next person in terms of connecting the dots and making sense of the chaos we're all walking through in the language of laughs, which is the comedian's job. And, a healthy sense of self-deprecation, an ability to admit that you don't know everything. And because I never want to seem like I'm coming... that's a sermon from the mound, I mean, I do get angry at things, and it's important for a comedian to speak truth to power. This mutant that has gained control of, the land that gave the world democracy and freedom and all those great accolades that we once associated with America. That's, it's a pretty important time for comedians, and it's an important time to get it right. And I think with so many people in positions of power who are abusing it, then it's ever more imperative to try to find some kind of level playing field and a balance in this world where terra firma is constantly becoming terra incognito. And I mean it. I'm just as confused as the next person, but I like to A, put it in language that's understandable. B, I never underestimate the intelligence of the room. And I like the way words trip off the tongue and tickle the ear as well as the funny bone. And I make the assumption that everybody is, like you said, watching the news and reading the newspapers and reading social media and trying to foment some kind of clear perspective on what's going on. And I always saw laughter acting as an adhesive to the narrative of storytelling.
Your New Year's Eve special, that we've had the pleasure of watching for so many years. It really is a year in review. So I could not imagine what it must be like for you every day when you're waking up and when you're watching reading the paper or watching television, and something happens and you kind of think to yourself, oh boy, guess I'll be using that in the special.
Is it going to have legs? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Will it have legs in January? I have great colleagues, Paul Pogue and Scott Montgomery, and this year Pete Zedlacker dropped by and did some pinch hitting. When I was back home taking care of my dad. And that's the question we have to ask. I mean, we always write twice as much because, like a sculpture, an awful lot of that block of marble lands on the floor. And that's why we take broader strokes in the show. And I like to look at how things have affected us over the long term rather than live in the heat of the moment. We had one piece that I wrote about, I happened to hit the stage when Weinstein was charged. And I said, geez, given the number of sexual assaults on that man, pretty soon he'll be running for president. And but then we said that in October, huge round of applause. By the time I got in the editing room, and by the time the entire house of cards, no pun intended, fell away, and everybody was called to task who had abused their power, and women, it became an obsolete joke, right? And so, and then of course there's a certain amount of network censorship based on their own particulars. And then there's, just legal things that you can or can't say. We don't have HBO. It is CBC. It is 9 o'clock on New Year's Eve. And so you have to hope that what you're writing in July and August is still going to have those legs. And the fact is, the world is changing so nanosecond fast. I mean, Trump could be impeached before December 31st. So you hope that what we've said and what I'm delivering is going to have that resonance for everyone in New Year's. And they won't say, oh, he missed that, he missed that, he missed that. What I do have is, I think, an assessment of the year in review, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going.
Okay, I don't want to give too much away on this because I think folks need to watch this because it's hilarious. I've had a chance to see the screening. Usually, like last year, you had a chance to talk about the U.S. president. Of course, you had a chance to talk about our prime minister. Yeah. You got a new guy in town, somebody who seems to love to shoot around nuclear weapons all over the place. You get to make some jokes about him, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you've got two whiny man babies on the scene with tiny hands playing Show Me Yours with thermonuclear stockpiles that could vaporize the planet, anybody's going to be worried. But I thought to myself, geez, just my luck. The world's going to end when the Leafs are finally getting good again.
That one, I was busted out laughing. I was like, and he's right too.
But if you can land on a place that has a common denominator, if you can deal with a big subject and land on a place where people can mutually react and identify, then that's where you want to land. And you always want to land on a strong place with your humor. You don't want it to fizzle out. You want the joke to have a solid setup and a punchline. And so, so I try to find those common denominators for Canadians and for the average Joe who might be watching the show, And so far, we've done pretty well. I mean, the last two specials have done 1.5 million viewers, so I'm really proud of that. And, the years I've been on the road touring extensively, I just finished a big tour of the Canadian West, and I've got another one coming up in Ontario in the wintertime. It allows you to take a reading, a temperature, a litmus test of the country, And some of the bits I did in the television show become far longer too, right? That's what's really great is you begin to stretch them out or you mix and match stuff. But it's a freaky day, man. It's a dangerous day. And I mean, when you've got some aberrant manifestation of the American dream at the reins of power with the nuclear codes, it only stands to reason that that comedians will try to make hay of that. And I mean, I wish I had a dime for every malignant statement that danced from his gilded cake hole, but I was only doing an hour, not a mini-series. Nevertheless, the phrase that stuck in my mind is when he said women who get abortion should be punished, throwing red meat to his Christian fascist base. And I said, Jesus, the only woman who should be punished is Donald's mother for not having one. So,
but you talk a lot about Trump, and as you just mentioned,
hold our own over the fire too. You got to hold, the sheens off the pumpkin with the Dauphin.
That's what I want to get to. I mean, with Justin Trudeau, you go into the fact of, okay, we love your rock style, but hey, let's face it, it's time to govern the country.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, he's dropped the ball on promises, electoral change, the missing women inquiry. And last year, I hit him hard, and I don't mind hitting him, because it was about the NAFTA issue, and said, look, if we're going to be giving our way water to free in NAFTA, because America's entitled to it thanks to Mulrooney, when Arizona and California run Dead Gulch dry, they're going to be sticking a straw somewhere up here. And I said, look, man, why don't we give it to our indigenous communities, right? I mean, some of those reservations have had to boil their water for 20 years. There's better sewage systems in Somalian refugee camps than 2/3 of the reservations in the country. And the truth is, you'd be safer drinking water from a pissed-in puddle at the Mogadishu dump than you would from 2/3 of the boreal gulag stretched across Canada's tree line. I'll guarantee you one thing. If brown water were coming out of the taps in a Tonied corner of Canada like Westmount, Kitsilano, or Rosedale, it'd be fixed faster than a horny horse in the Mounties musical ride. Come on, Justin. It's plumbing. How hard can it be? Take a course at Home Depot. And, the Tory trolls are quick to crucify you online. I posted a thing on Instagram when I was out west about I saw a big radioactive warning on the Peterbilt grill of some gigantic